With Luminous Avenger X being released very shortly, I decided to get back and play Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, a whole year after I said I would. So how well does the next iteration of Azure Striker Gunvolt play compared to the first one? And how well does it segue into its own sort of spin-off? Well, that's what we're going to find out here today, so let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in and take a look at Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. So Azure Striker Gunvolt 2 takes place sometime after the first one. With the Sumeragi group scrambling and Asimov out of the picture, Gunvolt left Quill for good, acting on his own volition alongside Joule, who has merged with Gunvolt in order to stay with them after her physical death in the last game. While infiltrating a Sumeragi airship, Gunvolt is told that the ship he's on is on a crash course towards the city. Meanwhile, a returning Copen searches throughout the city trying to find his sister, It gets pronounced really funky. I'm just going to call her Myrtle. When he comes across the falling airship. Seeing an opening, he uses his tech to blast a large beam to assist Gunvolt in landing the ship properly. While leaving, Gunvolt rescues a girl from a big robot and takes her to Copen, who still has huge hatred for adepts. Just then, they're attacked by Adepts Tenjin and a returning Zonda, much to Copen's surprise, as he thought he disposed of them in the first game. They coax, then kidnap Joule, and Zonda uses its ability to shatter her into many pieces, with Zonda declaring that it will lead Adepts towards paradise, declaring itself the leader of a group known as Eden, and revealing its true form before leaving. Gunvolt dukes it out with Tenjin and manages to get a shard of Joule back before he too retreats. But Copen then takes the shard away in order to further study into his means of dispatching adepts. Joule then re-manifests herself to Gunvolt, but with much less power, and also for some reason heavily chibified. Gunvolt then swears to save her and goes after Zonda and its group of adepts known as the Seven. So as writing this out, it did seem like that there was a lot to go over with the general plot setup of this game, and in all honesty, there kind of is, but in this game's case, it's more or less just re-establishing the world, the characters, and the rules for that world into this one opening, basically. And even then, the entire plot itself is more or less just a rehash of the first game, and they even kind of mention it as well regarding some dialogue between Gunvolt and Zonda. And might I add, bringing Zonda back as the main villain is kind of weak. It was such a throwaway character in the first game, only being memorable for being that one bigendered individual. And I get how they brought them back for this game, but to end up being the mastermind behind this game's events, it just doesn't seem right. As for the main characters, Gunvolt is basically the same person as he was in the last game, which isn't a bad thing. He's broody, but has a strong sense of justice, and is unintentionally dense sometimes, which is fun. He also got a redesign, which does look kind of nice. It's hard to call Joule, since she acts near identical to Lumen from the last game, but she's fine, if a little snobby sometimes, though there are reasons for that is explained. What's not explained is her lullification, which this game seems to have a very big fascination with doing. Aiding Gunvolt is Xiao and Quinn. Xiao being the one that acts as Gunvolt's handler in this game, and Quinn is just there to be there. Literally. She's just a human who dotes over Gunvolt, much to Joule's annoyance. They hint at something interesting with her, since she can hear and see, Joule despite being human. But that thread literally goes no further than I can do it because I can. Speaking of cool concepts mostly wasted, here's Copen. It's neat that any sort of media, entertainment, whatever, tries to view religion and science as cooperating ideologies rather than pitting them against each other. But then that doesn't go much further than Copen damning people to hell for the most part. But his side of the story does seem to hold a bit more intrigue that does seem somewhat resolved, enough so that his soon-to-be-released spin-off does make some sense. Outside of that, Copen still has his major rage boner against Adepts. He's also accompanied by his support robot Lola, who basically acts as Copen's version of Joule, both in story and in character as well. Then there's Myrtle, who acts as a target for the baddies, and Nori, who's Copen's handler of sorts. There are the boss adepts as well, and just general world building as well. But I find that it's done a little bit worse here, where in the last game a lot of the setup was done before the mission begins and a little bit of dialogue during the missions. Here, characters spout out constant information at you as you're racing through levels, and on top of that, just not being able to read it because I'm too focused on being able to make my way through levels. During some boss fights, their portraits will sometimes block their positioning. Can you just stop hiding behind your face? To be fair, it's good that a game can, keep giving you dialogue as you still just continue to play through levels, but I would have liked to have been able to understand what was going on, which kind of leads to the point that it's not English voiced over, unfortunately. It's still Japanese voiced over. If it was English VA'd, then the problem probably wouldn't persist as much. But as for the game itself, its structure is somewhat similar. You have a list of adepts to fight, a synthesis menu, equip loadouts and such. However, Copen and Gunvolt do have different pathways they take for the story mode regarding the adepts that they fight. They both, in the end, fight all of them regardless, but each character gets 3 exclusively to them, as well as a shared Tenjin stage to pick from the start, which leads into the final stages, each having the leftover adepts as bosses, culminating in some extremely short individual campaign lengths. Now, before I talk about the levels you go through, I think it's important to talk about how each character plays, because they do heavily impact the level structure this go around. Gunvolt plays exactly how he did in the first game, down to a T. If you want to know the gist, I suggest watching my first video on Azure Striker Gunvolt. But the big thing to note, and they even kind of bring up in the story, further cementing its importance, is his Prevasion ability. In this game, Prevasion now acts as like a tangible feat that can be tracked. Bracelets now have like X amount of ability with Prevasion and its usage amount tied on to it. There are like 1 or 2 that deliberately takes it away, giving you that more hardcore experience. But I find that the level structure, and more notably most of the bosses, have much more aggressive and hard to dodge abilities that taking it away, I find, would make it a little bit too frustrating to play, acting more as an energy management kind of game. And that's not even mentioning how Copen plays. So, Copen's shtick is that he has these bullets linked to him, alongside his support bot Lola. Now, Copen can perform these air dashes that cost a bullet to perform. Lola can copy boss abilities and turn them into a variety of different attacks that Copen can use on the fly. Now, if you use the dash against an enemy, Copen can lock onto that enemy and use his primary gun and Lola's ability directly at them. Your main goal is to try and combo multiple dashes against enemies for as long as you can, trying to stay in the air longer. Doing so will net you more points, leading back to that returning function from the first game, where if you get enough points, then your support character will start to sing to you. So right there, there's a sense of reckless abandon with Copen, as dashing won't cause you any damage so long as you don't run into projectiles or the sort. Added to that is that each bullet acts as a permanent pre-evasion skill for Copen. You can equip Copen's loadout to do different things, except that 1, you will have to replay levels a lot just to get enough materials to fill out his jacket, and 2, Prevasion will always be a thing, meaning that his levels and fights had to be adjusted with that in mind, meaning that Gunvolt also had to suffer with his level structure since they do share some levels, leading to the original point that this game isn't just short, it's way easier. 8-ish stages for each character, and some just felt shorter. The only time I died that wasn't from the game eating my inputs.
What happens if we fall in a pit? Is it bottomless?
Well, we're about to find out. Was at the true final boss of Gunvolt's playthrough, which, spoiler alert, ends up being Copen, since they actually twisted the fight around to be more challenging for how Gunvolt plays. Side note, the requirements for this game's true ending is way more manageable than the last game, so that was nice, I guess. But despite its short length, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like how Copen plays. It's that kind of visceral excitement you get by just rushing down your enemies left and right, zipping around and bouncing off walls as you land your shots against your enemies as you try and play the longest game of the floor as lava as possible. It's really exciting. My only little nag being that I wish for Copen his screen wasn't quite as centered as it was, though I'm sure it'd be kind of weird to do so permanently. But there was one level where Lola was like, here, let's move the screen up. And having that small amount of vision added to you made aiming your dashes all the more fun. Another quick nag I had was that one of Copen's abilities caused my game to chug for some reason on the Switch, which was really weird, so I tried not to use it as much. As for everything else, I mean, it is Inti Creates, so obviously the sprite work is gonna be incredible. I absolutely love the detail and animation quality they put into them. As well, they have some fantastic artworks and stills that they have all throughout the game, even if someone got a little too lolly happy, but anywho. The music is largely forgettable, and just like with the last game, although there is synthesis in this game, don't expect it to utilize as much in a singular playthrough. You will have to play this game a lot in order to get the most out of the equipment. So yeah, this game didn't really live up to the first one in my opinion, at least. This one just felt rushed. It was super short. Character arcs and conflicts and bosses, they come and go like the wind, and I was just not feeling as impressed with this one like the last game. But I mean, as always, it's Inti Creates, so you do have some fantastic sprite work, which is always fantastic. And it did introduce Copen's gameplay, which was super fun, and ended up being my favorite of the two characters that you can play as. So it will be really interesting to see where they can take that kind of gameplay style going into Luminous Avenger X. It will be pretty sweet, hopefully. Hopefully they'll take it somewheres with a lot less lollies.
Get ready for the apex of 2D action. Purchase the game early to receive the exclusive Lolaware DLC costume for Kohaku.
Ah, crap. But anywho, thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you saw, you can click right up here to check out some of my other videos that I've done. Or, if you really feel like it, you can click right up here to subscribe. And until next time, guys, I will see you all later.